What would you do if you discovered that your closest ally was betraying you in the most intimate way possible? Have you ever felt that gnawing suspicion that something wasn't right in your relationship? That gut feeling that keeps you awake at night, making you question every smile, every I love you, every moment of supposed happiness? Tonight, I'm going to tell you about Dr. Elijah Matthews, a man who had everything the world told him he should want. A renowned surgeon at Emory University Hospital, respected by colleagues and feared by diseases that dared challenge his patients. A self-made millionaire who rose from nothing, turning medical school debt into a fortune that most people only dream about. But here's what the medical journals and business magazines never mentioned. Success in the operating room doesn't guarantee success in the bedroom. Professional excellence doesn't protect you from personal devastation. Elijah's story begins like so many others. A powerful man, a beautiful wife, and a life that looked perfect from the outside. Cassandra Lee wasn't just any woman. She was a model whose face graced magazine covers, whose presence commanded attention at every charity gala and medical conference dinner. Together, they were Atlanta's golden couple. Yet something was rotting beneath that golden surface. For months, Elijah noticed the changes. Cassandra's phone face down on the table. Late-night photo shoots that seemed to multiply. Distance that grew wider with each passing week. Despite living in the same house, sleeping in the same bed, the whispers started at hospital fundraisers. Colleagues' wives exchanging glances. Conversations that stopped when he entered rooms. But Elijah Matthews didn't become one of Atlanta's most successful surgeons by ignoring symptoms. If you've ever questioned whether success can shield you from heartbreak, hit that like button, because this story will shatter every assumption you have about power, trust, and betrayal. Dr. Matthews made a decision that would change everything. Instead of confronting his suspicions head-on, instead of hiring private investigators or demanding answers, he chose a different path, a path that required the same precision he used in surgery, the same calculated risk-taking that built his fortune. He was going to catch them himself. But what if I told you this story isn't just about catching cheaters? What if the real revelation wasn't about infidelity, but about something much deeper, something that challenges everything we think we know about success, loyalty, and the price we pay for both? What Elijah discovered that night would force him to question not just his marriage, but everything he thought he knew about the people closest to him, and what he chose to do about it. Well, that's where the story gets really interesting. The man who saved lives for a living was about to discover whether he could save his own. To understand the magnitude of what Dr. Elijah Matthews was about to lose, you need to know where he came from. Elijah wasn't born into wealth. He wasn't handed connections or opportunities on a silver platter. His childhood in East Cleveland was marked by empty refrigerators and eviction notices. His mother, Patricia, worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, cleaning offices at night, stocking shelves at dawn, and watching other people's children in between. But Patricia Matthews had one unwavering belief. Education was the only ladder out of poverty that nobody could kick away from you. While other kids played video games, Elijah studied. While they partied in high school, he volunteered at the local clinic, watching doctors with the same intensity other teenagers watched athletes. He saw how people looked at physicians, with respect, with hope, with trust. He wanted that power to heal, that ability to change lives with knowledge and skill. Medical school at Howard University came with crushing debt, but Elijah attacked it like every other challenge, with relentless determination. 18-hour study days became routine. Sleep became optional. Social life became non-existent. The payoff was extraordinary. By 35, Dr. Elijah Matthews had become one of the youngest department heads in Emory University Hospital's history. His hands saved lives that other surgeons wrote off as lost causes. His investment portfolio grew as steadily as his reputation. Real estate, tech stocks, medical device companies, everything he touched seemed to turn profitable. That's when he met Cassandra Lee. She walked into a charity auction for children's heart surgery like she owned the room. Not because she was arrogant, but because confidence radiated from her like warmth from a fireplace. Her smile lit up conversations. Her laugh made even the most serious cardiac surgeon feel like the most interesting person in the world. Cassandra wasn't just beautiful, though magazines certainly noticed that. She was intelligent, passionate about causes that mattered, and genuinely interested in Elijah's work. While other women saw dollar signs when they looked at successful doctors, Cassandra asked about his patients, about the complexities of surgery, about the emotional weight of holding people's lives in his hands. Their wedding 2 years later made Atlanta Society pages. The golden couple, the brilliant surgeon who conquered hearts in operating rooms, and the stunning model who conquered hearts on magazine covers. For the first 3 years, it felt like a fairy tale. Cassandra would surprise him at the hospital with lunch during his brief breaks. She learned medical terminology just so she could understand his stories about difficult cases. When exhaustion weighed him down after particularly challenging surgeries, she'd run baths and listen without judgment as he processed pressure of life-and-death decisions. They traveled to medical conferences together. Cassandra never complained about the long hours or the emergency calls that interrupted dinners, vacations, and anniversaries. She seemed to understand that saving lives required sacrifice from both of them, but success has a way of changing everything, even when you don't notice it happening. As Elijah's practice grew, so did the demands on his time. Longer surgeries, more complex cases, speaking engagements that took him across the country, investment meetings that stretched late into evenings, board positions that required weekend commitments. Cassandra's modeling career was flourishing too. Fashion weeks in New York, Paris, and Milan, magazine shoots that lasted for days, brand partnerships that required constant social media presence and networking events. Somewhere between his operating schedules and her photo shoots, they stopped having breakfast together. Date nights became monthly occurrences, then quarterly, then whenever they could find time. The first crack appeared during a hospital fundraising gala 6 months ago. Elijah was networking with potential donors, discussing a new pediatric wing, when he spotted Cassandra across the ballroom. She was laughing with a group of people he didn't recognize, her hand resting on the arm of a man in an expensive suit. Nothing inappropriate, nothing obvious, just an intimacy in her body language that he hadn't seen directed toward him in months. When he approached, introductions were made quickly. Conversations shifted, and the man, some real estate developer, excused himself almost immediately. Cassandra's explanation was perfectly reasonable, networking for a potential brand collaboration. But doubt, once planted, grows in the dark spaces of a relationship. Late-night shoots became more frequent. Her phone, once casually left on counters and tables, now went everywhere with her, to the bathroom, to bed, on morning runs. Conversations about their day became shorter, more surface level, more guarded. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March. Elijah had rearranged his entire schedule, postponed 2 surgeries, and cleared his calendar for their 4th wedding anniversary dinner. The reservation at their favorite restaurant was confirmed. The jewelry store had called to confirm his pickup of the diamond earrings he'd chosen specially for her. At 7:47 p.m., as he sat alone at their table watching other couples celebrate their own milestones, Cassandra's text arrived. Emergency shoot ran late. So sorry. Rain check. That night, staring at the ceiling while Cassandra slept soundly beside him, Elijah made a decision that would change everything. He was going to find out the truth, no matter what it cost him. The idea came to Elijah during a 3 a.m. emergency surgery. As he worked to repair a motorcycle accident victim's damaged arteries, his mind wandered to the same question that had been haunting him for weeks. How do you catch someone you love in a lie without destroying everything you built together? His hands moved with practiced precision, but his thoughts were calculating a different kind of operation entirely. The solution was almost elegant in its simplicity. Emory University Hospital operated around the clock. Emergency surgeries, trauma cases, and critical care patients didn't follow business hours. Night shift doctors were as common as day shift doctors, and significantly less visible to the outside world. What if Cassandra believed he had taken on additional night shifts? What if she thought he was spending those late hours at the hospital, earning extra income or fulfilling additional responsibilities? When he was actually watching, the plan required the same methodical thinking he applied to complex surgeries. Every detail had to be perfect. Every contingency had to be considered. One mistake could cost him everything: his marriage, his reputation, and possibly his career. First, he needed to establish credible cover. Dr. Rodriguez in the emergency department owed him several favors. Last year, Elijah had covered Rodriguez's shifts during his father's extended illness, working double duty without complaint. A quiet conversation in the physician's lounge was all it took. "I need some flexibility with my schedule," Elijah explained carefully. "Personal matter. Nothing that affects patient care, but I might need to leave suddenly or come in at odd hours." Rodriguez asked no questions. In their profession, personal crises were understood to be exactly that: personal. Next, Elijah began laying groundwork with Cassandra. The hospital is expanding the cardiac surgery program. He mentioned casually over breakfast. They're asking department heads to take on additional oversight responsibilities. Might mean some irregular hours. Cassandra barely looked up from her phone. That's great, honey." Her indifference stung, but also confirmed his suspicions. The woman who once hung on every word about his career developments now treated major professional news like background noise. The technical aspects came next. Elijah's home security system would be his ally. He had administrative access to all cameras, motion sensors, and entry logs. A few adjustments to notification settings meant he could monitor activity remotely without triggering obvious alerts. His Tesla's silent mode would be crucial. The car could arrive and depart without the engine noise that might alert Cassandra to his presence. Strategic parking 3 blocks away would keep the vehicle invisible from their home's windows. But the psychological preparation was the hardest part. Elijah found himself staring at wedding photos, questioning every smile, every touch, every moment of apparent happiness. Was Cassandra already thinking about someone else when these pictures were taken? Had their entire marriage been a performance? The doubt was consuming him from the inside out. Sleep became elusive. During the day, he functioned normally, performing surgeries, consulting with patients, attending meetings. But at night, his mind raced through scenarios. What would he do if his suspicions were confirmed? What would he do if they weren't? Have you ever had to become a detective in your own life? Comment below if you can relate to that suffocating feeling of needing proof, even when part of you desperately hopes you're wrong. 3 weeks of preparation led to the night that would change everything. Cassandra had mentioned a late photo shoot for a luxury skincare campaign. "Might not be home until after midnight," she'd said, kissing his cheek with the same casual affection she'd show a brother. "Don't wait up." Elijah told her he'd picked up an emergency surgery that could run until morning. "Complicated case," he'd explained. "Multiple trauma from a car accident. Could be 8 hours or more." Neither of them questioned the other's story. As Cassandra left in her BMW at 6 p.m., waving goodbye with perfectly manicured fingers, Elijah watched from his study window. She looked beautiful, confident, completely at ease. By 7 p.m., he was in his Tesla, parked 3 blocks from their home, watching his own security camera feeds on his phone. The waiting began, and with it, the most difficult night of Dr. Elijah Matthews' life. The first 3 nights yielded nothing but confirmation of Elijah's growing paranoia. Night 1. Cassandra returned home at 11:47 p.m., exactly when she said she would. She moved through their house with familiar ease, made herself tea, scrolled through her phone, and went to bed. Alone. Night 2. A client dinner that ended at 10:30 p.m. Security cameras showed her arriving home, talking animatedly on the phone with someone. But the conversation appeared to be about work, gesturing toward what looked like contract negotiations. Night 3. Home by 9 p.m. with takeout from their favorite Thai restaurant. She'd even texted him a photo of the extra pad Thai she'd bought for him, sitting in his car. Watching his own home like a stranger, Elijah began to question his sanity. Maybe the distance between them really was just a natural evolution of a busy marriage. Maybe her phone habits had changed for innocent reasons. Maybe he was destroying his mental health over nothing more than his own insecurities. The doubt was almost worse than suspicion. But on the 4th night, everything changed. Cassandra left for what she called a late evening brand consultation with potential investors. Designer dress, expensive jewelry, the kind of outfit she wore when she needed to make powerful impressions. She kissed him goodbye with slightly more warmth than usual, enough to make him wonder if she was overcompensating for something. By 8 p.m., Elijah was in position. The Tesla sat quietly under a broken streetlight, its dark interior making him nearly invisible to passing traffic. His phone displayed 4 camera feeds from different angles of their property. 8:47 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled into their driveway. Elijah's breath caught. He didn't recognize the vehicle, but the driver was unmistakable even through the security camera's grainy footage. Malik Davis, his personal driver for the past 2 years. Malik wasn't supposed to be working tonight. More importantly, Malik had his own set of keys to the house, a necessity for delivering packages, handling maintenance issues, and managing household logistics when both Elijah and Cassandra traveled. The Mercedes sat in the driveway for 17 minutes, long enough for Elijah's mind to race through innocent explanations. Maybe Cassandra had forgotten something. Maybe there was a household emergency. Maybe Malik was simply checking on the property as part of his duties. But when Cassandra's BMW pulled in beside the Mercedes at 9:04 p.m., every innocent explanation crumbled. Elijah watched his wife exit her car and walked directly to the Mercedes. Through the grainy security feed, he could see gestures, conversation, what appeared to be laughter. Then both figures moved toward the house, Malik's hand resting on the small of Cassandra's back with casual familiarity. The cameras inside the house told the rest of the story. Living room lights came on. 2 figures moving through spaces that Elijah had shared with Cassandra for 4 years. But now everything looked different. Foreign. Violated. Wine glasses appeared. Cassandra disappeared upstairs. Their bedroom was one of the few rooms without security cameras. A privacy decision that now felt like torture. When she returned 20 minutes later, she was wearing one of Elijah's favorite silk robes. The emerald green one he'd bought her for their 2nd anniversary. Malik was still there. For the next hour and 47 minutes, Elijah watched fragments of betrayal play out through security feeds. Glimpses of intimacy in hallways. Shadows moving past doorways. The casual comfort of 2 people who clearly knew each other's rhythms, preferences, and secrets. At 10:51 p.m., both figures moved toward the front door. Malik left first, his departure casual and unhurried. No guilty rushing, no furtive glances. Just the easy confidence of a man who felt completely secure in his actions. Cassandra stood in the doorway watching his departure, still wearing Elijah's anniversary gift. The rage hit him like a physical blow. Not just anger, fury that made his surgeon's hands shake for the first time in 15 years. The same hands that could perform delicate cardiac procedures without trembling were now gripping his steering wheel hard enough to leave marks. But underneath the rage was something worse. Humiliation. Malik Davis knew intimate details about Elijah's life. His schedule, his habits, his vulnerabilities. Malik had driven him to medical conferences while secretly planning to seduce his wife. He had accepted Christmas bonuses and performance raises while systematically betraying the trust that made those rewards possible. The professional betrayal was almost as devastating as the personal one. Elijah forced himself to wait until 11:30 p.m. before returning home. He needed time to compose himself, to decide his next move, to figure out how to confront the situation without destroying everything in a moment of rage. When he walked to their front door, Cassandra was in the kitchen, still wearing the green robe, washing wine glasses. "How was surgery?" she asked without turning around, her voice carrying the same casual warmth she'd used for months. "Complicated," Elijah replied, his voice steadier than he'd expected. Patient pulled through, but it was touch and go. She nodded, dried her hands on a towel. "I'm glad. You're so good at what you do." The compliment, coming from someone who had spent the evening with another man in their home, felt like acid in his throat. "How was your consultation?" he asked. "Productive. I think we'll move forward with the partnership." Cassandra smiled at him, the same smile that captivated him at that charity auction years ago. "I'm exhausted, though. Go to head up to bed." She kissed his cheek, a brief, familiar gesture that now felt like mockery. As she headed upstairs, Elijah stood in his kitchen, surrounded by the life he'd built. the success he'd achieved, and the marriage he'd thought was real. The wine glasses she washed still held faint traces of lipstick. 2 different shades. The evidence was undeniable. The betrayal was confirmed. And tomorrow, Dr. Elijah Matthews would have to decide what kind of man he really was, and what kind of future he was willing to fight for. But tonight, he had to figure out how to sleep in a bed that no longer felt like home. 3 days passed in a haze of forced normalcy. Elijah performed surgeries with mechanical precision, while his mind replayed security footage. He attended department meetings while calculating how long Malik had been betraying him. He made small talk with Cassandra over breakfast, while studying her face for signs of guilt that never appeared. The waiting was killing him. Every interaction felt like performance art. Cassandra discussing her upcoming shoots with enthusiasm. Malik arriving punctually each morning to drive Elijah to the hospital, making pleasant conversation about traffic and weather. Both of them acting as if they hadn't spent intimate hours together in Elijah's own home just 72 hours earlier. But on Friday evening, the carefully maintained facade finally cracked. Elijah had told Cassandra he'd been called in for an emergency consultation, a teenage car accident victim requiring immediate cardiac surgery. The story was becoming easier to tell, the lies flowing with disturbing fluency. "Take your time," Cassandra had said, barely looking up from her laptop. "I'll probably be asleep when you get back. Early photo shoot tomorrow." By 8:30 p.m., Elijah was in position, watching his home through multiple camera angles. This time, he wasn't content with distant surveillance. He needed to see everything, to understand the full scope of what was happening under his own roof. At 9:15 p.m., Malik's Mercedes appeared. But this time, Elijah didn't stay in his car. Moving with the same calculated precision he used in operating rooms, he approached his own home like a stranger. The landscaping he'd personally designed provided perfect cover. Mature hedges offered concealment along the property's perimeter. Motion sensor lights had been strategically disabled earlier in the week. Through the living room windows, he watched the scene unfold with devastating clarity. Cassandra opened the door before Malik could knock. She was already dressed casually, yoga pants and a fitted top that Elijah recognized as one of her favorites. Her hair was down, styled the way she wore it during their most intimate moments together. They embraced immediately. Not the quick, polite hug of employer and employee, but the desperate embrace of lovers who had been counting hours until they could touch again. Malik lifted her slightly off the ground, and Cassandra wrapped her legs around his waist with practiced ease. Their kiss was hungry, passionate, completely uninhibited by any concern for discovery. Elijah's knees nearly buckled. He prepared himself for evidence of an affair, but witnessing the raw passion between them was devastating in ways he hadn't anticipated. This wasn't casual cheating or momentary weakness. This was love, or at least its passionate counterfeit. They moved through his living room with complete comfort, Malik knowing exactly where to find wine glasses, which cabinet held a good scotch, how to adjust the sound system to play music that Elijah didn't recognize. These weren't the fumbling movements of new lovers. This was domestic intimacy built over months, maybe longer. Cassandra disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a bottle of wine that Elijah had been saving for their 5th anniversary. The 2015 Bordeaux he'd bought during their honeymoon in France, stored carefully in their wine cellar for a future celebration that now felt like mockery. She opened it without hesitation, pouring generous glasses for both of them. "To finally having the house to ourselves," Malik said, raising his glass. Through the window, Elijah could read his lips clearly. "To my husband working late again," Cassandra replied, clinking her glass against Malik's with a smile that made Elijah's chest feel like it was caving in. They toasted his absence. They celebrated his dedication to his patients, his profession, his responsibility, all the qualities that had made him successful and simultaneously made him blind to what was happening in his own home. The conversation that followed was worse than the physical intimacy. Elijah watched Cassandra curl up on their couch, the expensive sectional they'd chosen together during their 2nd year of marriage, and rest her head on Malik's shoulder. She looked relaxed in a way he hadn't seen in months. Happy, genuinely content. When had she stopped looking at him like that? Malik stroked her hair with gentle familiarity, and they talked for nearly an hour. Elijah couldn't hear their words through glass, but their body language told a story. Inside jokes that made Cassandra laugh until she wiped tears from her eyes. Serious conversations that required Malik's full attention and gentle reassurances. Planning discussions that involved checking calendars and coordinating schedules. They were building a life together. A secret life that existed in the spaces between Elijah's surgeries and business meetings. When they finally moved upstairs toward the bedroom that Elijah shared with Cassandra every night, he couldn't follow. Some violations were too complete to witness directly. Instead, he sat on his own front steps, head in his hands, trying to process the complete destruction of everything he believed about his marriage, his employee, and his ability to read the people closest to him. The successful surgeon who could diagnose complex medical conditions at a glance had been completely blind to the disease eating away at his personal life. When Malik left 2 hours later, he walked past Elijah's hiding spot close enough to touch. He was humming quietly, completely satisfied, utterly unaware that his employer was crouched behind landscaping like a criminal in his own yard. That night, lying next to Cassandra while she slept peacefully beside him, Elijah made his final decision. The investigation was over. Tomorrow, the confrontation would begin. Saturday morning arrived with a kind of perfect weather that mocked Elijah's internal storm. Cassandra was in their kitchen, making the elaborate weekend breakfast she prepared faithfully for 4 years. French press coffee, fresh fruit, eggs Benedict with hollandaise sauce made from scratch. She moved through the routine with practiced grace, humming softly to herself. She looked genuinely happy. "Morning, baby," she said, kissing his cheek as he entered the kitchen. "How was the surgery last night? You were so quiet when you came home." The casual endearment felt like a slap. The concern in her voice, manufactured or genuine, made his stomach turn. "Cassandra, we need to talk." Something in his tone made her pause. Hollandaise whisk suspended mid-stir. "Is everything okay? You look exhausted." "Sit down, please." She set the whisk aside carefully, studying his face with growing concern. "Elijah, you're scaring me. What's wrong?" He'd rehearsed this moment for hours, planning exactly what to say, how to present the evidence, how to maintain control. But sitting across from his wife at the breakfast table, where they'd shared thousands of morning conversations, all his preparation crumbled. "I know about Malik." The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Cassandra's face went through a series of micro-expressions that Elijah cataloged with surgical precision. Confusion, recognition, fear, and finally, resignation. What do you think you know? I know that he's been in our house. In our bedroom. I know about the wine, the music, the way you look at him." Elijah's voice remained steady, but his hands were trembling. "I know that you've been lying to me for months." Tears appeared in Cassandra's eyes, but she didn't deny it. The absence of shocked protest was somehow worse than any confession could have been. "How long have you known?" she whispered. "Long enough to understand that this isn't some momentary mistake. This is a relationship, Cassandra. You're in love with him." She flinched as if he'd struck her, but nodded slowly. "Yes." The simple honesty of that single word destroyed him more completely than months of deception had. "Why?" The question came out raw, desperate. "What did I do wrong? What couldn't I give you that he could?" Cassandra wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving mascara smudges that made her look vulnerable and young. "It's not about what you did wrong, Elijah. It's about what we both did wrong." "Explain that to me." She took a shaky breath. "When did we last have a conversation that wasn't about your schedule, my shoots, or household logistics? When did we last spend an entire evening together without your phone, without my phone, without some emergency or obligation pulling us apart? That's what marriage is, Cassandra. Building a life together requires." "Building separate lives in the same house isn't marriage," she interrupted. "For the past year, maybe longer, we've been roommates who happen to share a bed. Successful, attractive, wealthy roommates, but roommates nonetheless." The truth in her words was like acid in his chest. "Malik sees me," she continued. "Not the model version, not the doctor's wife version. He sees me when I'm tired, when I'm frustrated with work, when I need someone to just listen without trying to solve everything. He knows that I hate the taste of expensive wine, but drink it anyway because it's expected. He remembers that I prefer vanilla ice cream to all those artisanal flavors we keep in our freezer. Those are details, Cassandra. Trivial things. No, they're not. Her voice grew stronger. They're the foundation of intimacy. When was the last time you asked me how I felt about anything that wasn't directly related to your career or our social obligations? Elijah opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He couldn't remember. When was the last time we made love instead of just having sex between your surgery schedules? She asked quietly. He couldn't remember that either. The kitchen door opened, and Malik walked in carrying groceries, clearly expecting a normal Saturday morning routine. He stopped short when he saw them sitting at the table, Cassandra's tear-stained face, Elijah's rigid posture. I should go, Malik said immediately. No, Elijah said firmly. You should stay. We're all going to have this conversation together. Malik set the groceries down slowly, his usual easy confidence replaced by wariness. Dr. Matthews, How long? Elijah interrupted. 6 months, Malik replied without hesitation. But I need you to know. You need me to know what? That you're sorry? That you never meant for it to happen? That you respect me too much to have done this intentionally? I need you to know that I try to end it, Malik said quietly, multiple times. Because I do respect you. Because you've been good to me, fair to me, generous with opportunities and trust. But you didn't end it. No, sir, I didn't. Why? Malik looked at Cassandra, then back at Elijah. Because she was lonely. Because she needed someone to see her as more than an accessory to success. And because I fell in love with her. The honest simplicity of the statement was devastating. You fell in love with my wife. I fell in love with a woman who felt invisible in her own marriage. Elijah stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Don't you dare turn this into my fault. Don't you dare make me the villain in your love story. That's not what I'm doing, Malik said. I'm explaining how it happened, not justifying it. What we did was wrong. We both know that. But you kept doing it. Yes, sir, we did. If this story is hitting different, share it with someone who needs to hear about real resilience, because what happens next will surprise you. Silence filled the kitchen, broken only by the coffee maker's gentle gurgling. 3 people who had shared professional relationships, personal trust, and intimate secrets now sat in the wreckage of all those connections. What do you want, Elijah? Cassandra asked finally. Do you want to end it and pretend this never happened? Do you want us to go to counseling and try to rebuild something that maybe was never as strong as we thought it was? What I want, Elijah said slowly, is to understand how 2 people I trusted more than anyone else in the world could systematically deceive me for 6 months without either of you losing sleep over it. Who says we didn't lose sleep? Malik asked quietly. The guilt nearly killed me, Cassandra added, but the loneliness was killing me faster. Elijah looked at his wife, then at his employee, then at the breakfast she'd been preparing with such care just minutes before. Everything was about to change. The question was whether any of them would survive what came next. The silence that followed lasted exactly 37 seconds. Elijah counted them, his surgeon's mind automatically measuring time even in crisis. Finally, he spoke. Malik, you're fired. Elijah, Cassandra started. No. His voice was firm but not angry. This is a negotiable. Professional boundaries were crossed in ways that can't be repaired. Malik, I'll provide excellent references for your next position, and I'll honor your full severance package. But you can't work for me anymore. Malik nodded slowly. I understand. And Dr. Matthews, I'm genuinely sorry. Not just about getting caught, but about betraying your trust. You deserve better from both of us. Yes, Elijah said quietly. I did. After Malik left, collecting his keys and work phone with quiet dignity, Elijah and Cassandra sat across from each other in their kitchen like survivors of a natural disaster. What happens now? She asked. Elijah had been asking himself the same question for days. The easy answers, divorce, public humiliation, dividing assets, fell hollow. The vindictive responses, destroying Mallet's reputation. Exposing Cassandra's affair to their social circle felt beneath him. "I want to try," he said finally. "Try what?" "To save this. To save us. But not by pretending this didn't happen or going back to the way things were. We need to build something completely different." Cassandra's eyes filled with tears again. "Why would you want to do that? After what we did to you?" "Because the alternative is admitting that 4 years of marriage, all our shared experiences, all our dreams of future, can be destroyed by 6 months of mistakes. And I'm not ready to accept that." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was something more practical and more difficult. It was choosing to invest in possibility rather than surrender to pain. The next 6 months transformed their lives in ways that success never had. Marriage counseling with Dr. Patricia Williams became their Tuesday evening ritual. Not the comfortable, surface-level conversations they'd grown accustomed to, but deep, uncomfortable examinations of how they both contributed to their relationship's decline. "Elijah," Dr. Williams said during their 4th session, "when Cassandra describes feeling invisible, what do you hear?" "I hear someone making excuses for cheating," he'd replied honestly. "And what else?" "I hear..." He paused, struggling with admission. "I hear someone describing exactly how I felt growing up in poverty. Invisible, like my needs didn't matter, like I was just scenery in other people's important lives." The revelation hit both of them like lightning. Elijah had escaped poverty by becoming indispensable, first as a student, then as a doctor, then as a husband who provided everything material. But somewhere in his determination to never feel powerless again, he'd stopped seeing Cassandra as a partner and started treating her as another responsibility to manage successfully. "Success became my language of love," he admitted. "I thought providing for you, protecting you, building a secure life together was the same as loving you. And I thought being the perfect wife, supporting your career, looking good at events, never complaining about your schedule, was the same as being loved," Cassandra replied. They'd both been performing marriage instead of living it. The changes came slowly but consistently. Elijah reduced his surgery schedule, turning down lucrative consultations that would have taken him away from home. The financial impact was significant but manageable. The personal impact was revolutionary. Cassandra scaled back her modeling commitments, choosing projects that aligned with her values rather than just her bank account. She discovered she was passionate about health advocacy, particularly around mental health in the fashion industry. They instituted phone-free dinner hours, no devices, no work discussions, just conversation about everything else. Books they were reading, places they wanted to travel, childhood memories they'd never shared, dreams that extended beyond professional achievement. The intimacy returned gradually, not just physical, but emotional, learning each other again, discovering who they become during their years of parallel living. 6 months after confrontation, they had their first genuinely spontaneous date in over 2 years. No scheduled reservation, no formal attire, no social media documentation. Just Thai takeout in their living room, watching a terrible romantic comedy that made Cassandra laugh until she snorted wine through her nose. Elijah realized he'd forgotten the sound of her real laughter, but the transformation extended beyond their marriage. The betrayal had forced Elijah to confront uncomfortable truths about success in the Black professional community. The pressure to be perfect, to never show vulnerability, to sacrifice personal needs for professional advancement. These weren't just his individual struggles. They were systemic challenges affecting countless others. He began mentoring young Black physicians, but not in the traditional sense. Instead of focusing solely on medical skills and career advancement, he talked about work-life integration, relationship maintenance, and the importance of emotional intelligence alongside surgical precision. "Success without fulfillment is just expensive emptiness," he told a group of medical residents during a quarterly mentorship dinner. "I learned that lesson the hard way." He established the Matthews Foundation for Physician Wellness, focusing specifically on mental health resources for medical professionals and their families. The foundation's first initiative was subsidized counseling for medical couples, recognizing that the demands of healthcare careers created unique relationship challenges. Cassandra became his partner in this work, not just a supporter. Her experience in high-pressure industries and her journey through marriage crisis gave her authentic credibility when speaking to other professional couples about maintaining connection amid success. Malik, meanwhile, had found new employment with a tech executive who appreciated his discretion and reliability. The awkwardness of their final interactions had evolved into mutual respect, though they maintained appropriate distance. He'd sent a brief note when news of the Matthews Foundation launched, expressing pride in their growth and transformation. A year after that devastating Saturday morning confrontation, Elijah and Cassandra renewed their wedding vows in a private ceremony. Not because their marriage was perfect, but because they'd learned the difference between performing happiness and building it. This time, Elijah said in his vows, "I promise to see you every day, not just provide for you. I promise to choose us, even when choosing us is inconvenient or unprofitable." This time, Cassandra replied, "I promise to speak my needs instead of expecting you to guess them. I promise to choose us, even when choosing us requires uncomfortable honesty." Dr. Williams, who had guided them through their darkest months, officiated the ceremony. "Marriage isn't about avoiding betrayal," she said. "It's about choosing each other every day, especially on the days when choosing each other is difficult." Subscribe if you want more stories about real people facing impossible choices and coming out stronger, because this is just the beginning of understanding what true success really looks like. 2 years later, when colleagues asked Elijah about the secret to his successful marriage, he would smile and say, "We learned that being right isn't as important as being connected, and being successful isn't as important as being seen." The night shift deception had ended, but the real work, the daily choice to build intimacy instead of just maintaining an image, continued every single day. Some betrayals destroy relationships. Others, handled with courage and commitment, become the foundation for something stronger than what existed before. Dr. Elijah Matthews had learned to save more than lives. He'd learned to save love itself.